All right. I think that means we're live. I'm Andrew Hungerford, and I'm here with Ad Hoc Economy of Butcher Holler. Here we come. Here we've got Cole, Adam, Michael, Brendan, Isaac. They're joining us from all over the world right now. And they wanted to say a few words before we get started. So go ahead, fellas.
Do we talk about this?
Oh, I think Leighton's going.
I've got it.
Sorry.
We live in an era of crises in the West, but also in the world. Australia, China too. We have the energy crisis, the crisis of globalism, a crisis in education, now a global health crisis. Currently, we are also witnessing the results of an outcries against centuries of systemic racial injustice. If you look at history is filled with such crises. One could even say that all that history is a continual fluctuation of cultural narratives, an endless series of narrative rupture. Old narratives have to be destroyed so that new ones may survive. And the process of this destruction and renewal is inevitably crisis. Now, I don't think any of us would ever condone violence for violence's sake, but the destruction of old narratives and the generation of new ones is the most natural historical phenomenon in the world. In times of crisis, it is often the artistic voices that help build the new narratives of the future. Like many others right now, we are motivated in the effort to challenge the old narratives so that new methods, new perspectives, new voices, and new cultural narratives can begin to breathe. We commend everyone in the front lines who are making great sacrifices to help us weather all of the crises of our generation. The medical and service professionals who are helping us to navigate this debilitating pandemic, and the activists who are reminding us to never go to sleep when injustice is in our world. We applaud them. Black Lives Matter. Full stop.
Thank you so much for that, Adam. That actually leads us a little bit into talking about Butcher Holler Here We Come, because it's a story that's rooted in a lot of ways of land and inherent mythology of place, and has a lot to say about the displaced from that land and how stories evolve and reinvent and change. And the sort of the turning point of the plot is a moment of crisis instigated by the characters to try to bring about change. So with this story that's so tied to this specific West Virginia landscape, what first drew you all to this story, to want to tell this a story of this particular place?
Cole, do you want to jump in? I mean, the closest to Casey, since he's your brother.
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer without Casey in the room with us as the playwright, because the story is in terms of setting and circumstance and characters is really his story. I think for myself, and maybe for the rest of us, this may be true. The most compelling thing is the survival aspect of the story, or at least that's what initially grabs you. These are men who are stuck in a coal collapse, and that they are trying to survive. And so just as how it works in terms of a thriller, and of course, at the time, this is our 7-year anniversary. In fact, premiering the show, our world premiere was with No Theater and Cincy Fringe 7 years ago this month. And, we saw around that time, in the early part of the teens, the 20 teens, more instances as we've seen the coal industry, diminish in certain ways over the last generation or so. We still see these horrible accidents happening all different parts of the world. And I think that added some political relevancy to an interest to look at coal the coal mining industry as a whole and land use. Yeah, and then just once again, how it works as a psychological thriller.
Mm-hmm.
I know that early on, Cole and Casey told us all we needed to watch Harlan County, USA, which is an old documentary about a coal mining strike. And I didn't really know much about it. You know, I had kind of a vague idea of it. But for me, it was really revelatory, and just watching like how much these people were suffering and how hard they were fighting, and just how crazy it was that these coal miners just like hired people to come in and beat them and shoot them, and the police were completely on the coal mine, the owners of the coal mines like side, and like, you know, people died. And it was I didn't realize, for me 7 years ago, that was a big awakening in terms of like what protest meant, in terms of like history and change, and just kind of realizing like how hard these people had to fight for basic rights, and their own lives, while they were giving power and energy to like the rest of of America.
So, as you said, it premiered 7 years ago at this point in Cincinnati. And as I recall, you were in the tiny space that was the motor basement, which a lot of people have said, you know, was the best possible show to be in that space, and like an incredible pairing of space and content. I'm just wondering, as you've performed the show further over the last 7 years, has the script or the show changed much in that time? And or what is it like adapting it to different spaces as you go from place to place?
Leighton, do you take the script, the script adaptation?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly the way that the show was built is it was built as a submersive experience and a modular experience that we could tour to various different spaces. And so we've been in small spaces such as the basement of the motor pub, and we've been in very vast spaces where it feels more cavernous and maybe less cramped and claustrophobic. And I would say that, I mean, in general, I'd like to say, sort of adding on to everyone's responses from the last question, I think one way in which this play tries to evoke movement through crisis is through the immersion, and through having all of the audience and all of the actors sort of in this space together, and to sort of witness it in this visceral way. And it's, I mean, certainly it changes every single venue that we perform with. As far as script changes, you know, we've definitely adapted the script on a number of different fronts. I think it's been a while since any of us actually looked at the script. You know, I think the last time we all looked at the script, we realized that we had adapted it considerably without thinking about it.
I think it was 4 years ago that Cole actually pulled out a copy of the script to resolve like a disagreement about the moment, and I called him a coward to his face.
Recently, we've added in a lot more language that pays more honor to the Shawnee tribe that featured throughout the play, it was a bit of a development for us, sort of realizing how to address that sort of component of the story. I don't know, Michael, if you want to say
yeah, I don't really, I don't know, man. Before I say anything, I'm probably
not to put you on the spot. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I just feel like so like out of it. Like the last 2 weeks. I mean, well, everybody's been. And then I've been in Montana. Like anyway, yeah. I mean, we just tried to like, Casey wrote in the Shawnee, and it's kind of takes. We just tried to, I think, be more aware of what was happening with the Native American community, and pay a little bit more respect. Obviously, there's There's a lot of crazy parallels with like land usage and people being taken off of their land and being put on reservations, and and I think that's still kind of evolved. Honestly, like my wife is native, and it's just something that we've talked about a lot, and I think everybody's like on the same page of like I don't know, just educating yourself more and more. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of what we have been trying to do with some of those changes. And things like that.
I will say I found the sort of the threads of the Shawnee running through the script really evocative. So I think it's for me it was another additionally compelling thread that got pulled through. So yeah.
Another interesting. Sorry, and it's just to piggyback on your question about space and how the show's adapted to space, because we've done it in the basements of bars there, like at Motor Pub and in a Presbyterian church in the Upper West Side, karate shop attic in New Orleans, Palm Beach Organics warehouse in Florida, transitional homeless shelter in Lubbock, Texas, all sorts of spaces, dance studios, and then even somewhat proscenium style spaces, which the proscenium style spaces create the most challenge for us in terms of adapting to, because the staging is so immersive and it's alley. We have our kind of alley configuration of seating is the way we play it. But I guess my point is, so ultimately it kind of can work in almost any environment. We haven't been really seriously challenged by much because the darkness is the scenic world, is the atmosphere. And once you go in a room and you just turn off the lights, that darkness does enough. If anything, and Isaac can probably speak to this the most because he's, I think, the most attuned, let's say, or sensitive to a new. There's white walls that create a bounce for the headlamps, or any little crack in the room where some light might. Isaac is very, very attuned to that, and probably our biggest challenge is trying to achieve as close to a blackout situation as possible.
That's the second biggest. The first biggest is appeasing Isaac. Right.
This is true. I stand by this. Cole is often wrong in his choice of venue and how he disregards light bleed. I don't like it, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Well, thinking then further about adaptation to space, sort of the ultimate proscenium is the screen that we're watching this version on, and I was really impressed and taken by the way that you were able to work out camera movements to sort of capture the feeling of the immersion in the show, and the feeling of the audience having to turn their head and not knowing where to look. I know you had very little time to figure that out. Could you talk a little bit about the process of what was it like from when you found out you needed to stop doing the show while you were on your international tour to the moment of filming it?
So about 5 minutes, Cole, before we decided to start filming.
I remember there being a very kind of we had about a 15-minute cigarette smoke break outside of the Bats Theatre, New Zealand, and there was Brendan, you probably remember some of this the best as being new to the cast and kind of seeing the dynamics of the different points of view. There are 3 or 4 different theories about how we should go about filming this, and we had to decide quick. That's all I remember. I got to a point where I was like, okay,
we just got to do it.
We talked a lot, yeah, but it happened very quickly, and I feel like everybody kind of got on board with like, okay, like we need to obviously we have to pick somebody to film, like somebody that's not in the scene preferably, and then we sort of did these continuous shots. And Brendan, did you?
Well, I think you can sort of tell too, like what was sort of beautiful watching it, because of like they know the show so well, is that some of them had different ideas, but like it was basically done. A lot of these, you figure they did it like 5, 6, several takes. A lot of things I think was just one take. I think there maybe once or twice we did 2 takes, but it was a very rarity. So like just to see like Adam or Isaac take the camera and just like, they didn't like, for me, I think some of my choices were a little bit safer. You'll probably tell my shots where it's like trying to get like everyone in it and just, but the other guys are like coming in there swooping around and like, man, they just have one go at this, but they were like, no, it's going to be as creative as. So it's just, all right, just, it's pretty magical to watch. They just like committed to it and just a lot of the shots. I think the only thing was that there was a few audio stuff because of choices. But overall, I think if you were to just go on the fact that it was just one takes, just some of the angles and swoop arounds was great, considering it was like just having a go. Yeah.
Yeah. How much time did you actually have to in the space to do the recording?
I don't remember how many. There's just a
5
few
hours.
hours. Yeah, 5
Yeah,
hours,
yeah.
and then it was like, yeah,
But we'd already used some of that, so I think
because we were
had like 3 hours because they told us about 2 hours into our tech that the show was canceled, the festival was canceled.
Wow.
So yeah, we had like just a few, and that's why we got a lot of it then. But then we had to go back and piece together other scenes, when we were all over the world at that point.
Yeah, and well, I mean, also like right after they told us, like, there was a little bit of like emotion involved. Like we had left Sydney, we had hopped the plane, we had like got in just before the curfew. I mean, it's a long kind of ridiculous story, and we were like, I don't know, we had a lot riding on it. You know what I mean? Like anybody doing theater.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like once we kind of made peace with, well, this is what's happening. Yeah, then we shot it.
Yeah.
Guerrilla style.
One thing also that I think is quite interesting is the real intention, at least my understanding, whenever we started to film this 4 or 5 hour amount of footage, was okay. We knew that our shows were canceled, and we had just a few hours of time and space, and the thought was, we've never been able to get some really good archival footage of this show, just to summarily present to potential festivals or even grant organizations that might have environmental arts support. And so at least in my thinking, that the real thought was not even to create a live full telling of the show. It was just to kind of grab a few good juicy scenes. In my mind, now I'm not sure if Michael or Leighton, to what extent y'all had as an agenda, hey, maybe we should actually roll with this and make this a film. But in my mind, it was just purely archival. And then all of a sudden it became this thing of like, hey, we get some pretty good footage here. We almost got a full story.
Yeah. Leighton, what?
Well, I would also say, I mean, like, to respond to what Michael was saying, it was very emotional time, I think, for all of us. We were bouncing back and forth between different countries across the Pacific Ocean. We didn't know what was happening. We were trying to figure out, while we were finding out that our shows were canceled, we were also trying to figure out, do we have to come home now? And so there was some calculation, certainly, but I think it was also kind of a response of let's make this as worth it as we can. Let's try to use this time that we have here to do something that's a worthwhile creative result of all of the efforts and all of the, it's not about money, but it was costly, all of the funds, all of the efforts, all of the energy that we put into this. So.
Yeah.
And then I think like we kind of talked to Bats about maybe doing, everybody was like, okay, now what are people doing? It's this online content, like people are streaming things. I don't know. And then it sort of like formed. And I think the Bats Theater were doing some kind of online content. And we were like, yeah, we'll do that. But we don't have the whole show. So we had to like, again, like sort of, I feel like COVID quarantine art and then film in these sort of puzzle pieces that were missing across the country and in Australia.
Well, and I think the two different ways that you ended up filming, both the in-person and then the later composited footage, are sort of two interesting and in some ways contrasting ways of creating digital theater that I think is just really interesting that you're within one piece. You're able to present by necessity two very different approaches to this challenge that I think theater makers are all looking at. How complicated was the distance video and compositing process for you,
Michael?
I don't know. Like I spent like, I think it was like at least 70 hours editing everything. And we had like, we had put ourselves in like a week time frame. I don't know why we were like, yeah, we can do it in a week. And we just started like compiling all this stuff and like, we need this. Zoom meeting. And I mean, it was like, I got sick of watching the show, honestly. Like I told the guys, I was like, I never want to see the show again. I don't want to hear your voices. I don't want to hear my voice. Like I'm sick of this play. And I love it, I mean, but anyway, so now I'm like, I have this, like, it's almost like if it's not a part of like, a family member almost, you know what I mean? It's very familiar. But I mean, again, like there was a plane trip, like we were compiling footage and we just couldn't get some of it to work. Isaac was like filming himself in a closet. Leighton's filming himself outside in California. I'm filming myself in my garage. Brendan's filming himself outside. Cole and then Cole flew to Texas to like shoot some scenes with Isaac, and they looked great. I mean, they kind of like it made the deal, but also like Cole was like, I don't know, we're not supposed to talk about this. Like he was like, it's like in the middle of everybody supposed to be quarantining. He's like, get on a plane and go to.
It was 3 days from the end of quarantine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So it wasn't irresponsible. It wasn't.
So Cole and I were like, well, we'll break the quarantine, we'll do it, and then we'll just continue. I mean, Cole kind of naturally self-isolates anyway. But jab. But I was staying at a friend's apartment when I got back from New Zealand, and I'd met up with Cole. We shot the scenes, and I was like, we're going to the hotel. I'm not going back to their apartment because I didn't want to risk, doing that. And they were coming back, and So yeah, I mean, it ended up okay, but there was just no way to do the final scenes. We were trying to. How can we shoot it?
Right, and
carrying him out like it's just.
And I'm not a professional editor, I mean, I can clip things together. I'm self-taught. Like YouTube videos. I feel like a very proficient basic editor, but I do not have like I'm not like a juggler. And like they, worked really hard. And of course, there's some scenes that I'm really proud of where, and I don't know if Cole liked it so much, but like I put Leighton's head in there. And like Cole was like, I meshed two scenes together. And to me, I was like, this is my opus. Beautiful. And like, I think everybody was like, oh, you did. That's what you did, huh? But I think it was great.
I do want to say, I won't speak for anyone else, but for me, when I saw, I mean, it was a bit of a stressful time. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of work that everyone was putting into it, especially Michael. But I feel like at the end, when we were able to see the product, kind of like you mentioned, Andrew, it really astounded me at how interesting it was a response to the circumstances in which it was generated. Mm-hmm. And now we had a product that had the potential, I felt, and maybe still has the potential, to reach a wider audience and tell a story that, I don't know. I think it's a unique life story, the experience that we had going down to Australia, New Zealand, trying to put this film together, then trying to finish it in quarantine. And of course, we're very thrilled also to be invited back into the Cincinnati Fringe.
Yeah.
Because we definitely, we have a very long history with
this. So we have one comment from the audience online, not a question. The comment is, please tell the dogs I love them.
This is Leroy.
Handle that for us.
This is my father-in-law's dog, Leroy. They love you. And that's Watson. That's my dog, me and my wife's dog. Well, that's great. I'm sorry. Yeah. This is very unprofessional. Turn on the light. I'll be right back.
So I guess one last follow-up, because I don't want to hold you all forever, because I know you all have lives to deal with in various parts of the world. But after doing this, do you think this will lead you to doing more digital theater work, at least in the interim of this pandemic? Is it something that interests you, or does it just feel like a placeholder for you?
I think that's a complicated question. Cole,
Sure.
do you have an answer?
Yeah. It's of course it kind of falls a little bit in an umbrella. I'm in a kind of transitioning between a doctoral program right now in the fine arts and thinking a lot about how these events have kind of made new issues for us about how to move forward. Obviously, out of a sense of certainly urgency and desperation and the economy for the performing arts, there's some, I think there's some very exciting things happening with how we're exploring new modes of streaming content. Maybe in a certain way, I'm a bit of a purist, and ultimately, I'm trying to kind of get at the root of, even in a pandemic circumstance, or a potentially longer plague future, if we believe in the value of live theater or live performing arts that's not mediated by a laptop, it's actually in the room with an audience, what kind of ethical health codes and standards do we need to take into consideration, and how do those new rituals perhaps even how do they not limit the art form itself at the same time? And I think it's almost an existential question for live theater, which I think is both horrifying, but also a really exciting moment at the same time for us to really try to discover, both through virtualization and digital means, but then also as we go back to what we do live, really fundamentally ask us what the function of theater is. So in a certain way, as scary as it is, it's these new forms are I think an opportunity for us. So personally, I don't see myself doing a lot of digital stuff. I'm much more interested in live, but that's just me as a singular artist. I can't speak for the rest of the guys here.
See what happens. I like digital stuff, but at the same time, like I think that like everybody that does theater really likes the. I mean, it's the community, and there's something, really like hard to even put into words when something's really happening on stage that's live. And it's hard to capture that in this format, but I don't know, things change. That's all I got.
Yeah, no, it's like Cole's saying, it's an exciting invitation to try and be creative about this. And I think, we've always been, I think, primarily a live theater company, but we've also been at the very basis an artistic collective. And we've tried video in the past, and we've done all kinds of things, from doing a mutiny play on a steamship docked off the coast of Manhattan, to more traditional forms of theater. And I think there's certainly room for us to expand into whatever you have to.
Well, thank you all for joining us across so many time zones. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add just about the experience, or what you might be working on next?
I'm hoping to tear down the systems of capitalism and the racist injustice.
I love that.
And get us back to the Dionysian bloody drunken orgy theater. That's where I'm at right now.
So children's theater.
Let's
Wu-Tang, it's for the children.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So we'll burn it all down. That's what's going to happen next. I am with you. All right. Well, thank you all again so much. We really appreciate you being here and being able to bring the show back to the festival here 7 years later. It's really great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Back.
All right. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great night. Here's to you.